Welcome. This is the Drupal usability meeting for February 9th, 2024. I'm Benji Fisher moderating, and also here are Ralph Kohler. He is sharing his screen and will start off the discussion. And Aaron McHale, Duncan McCauley, Simo Helston, and Thomas Howell. Go ahead, Ralph.
The issue I wanted to talk about, I've brought up in Slack as well about 2 weeks ago. It's issue number 33893017. And 1 second, where's the chat? There's the chat. It's differentiate visual tracking with and without hierarchy. Just to illustrate, it's basically on some of the tables you have basically only the option to drag it vertically, and that way the icon got adjusted. And while on, for example, for menus, those are hierarchical, there you not only drag but also are able to change the position in hierarchy as well. The issue is more or less has already covered more or less all occasions that need a change to that just vertical reordering. The only small detail, I'm not sure if you're able to see the tooltip in Zoom.
Yes.
But it's just drag to reorder. And technically, the vertical and horizontal that here is not just a change of order, but also a change in hierarchy. And therefore, I've wondered if it would make sense to properly label both differently and illustrate that way and label that way that there are different options. And the additional question would be then in regards of the wordsmithing. That's basically gist.
Okay, so the only change I notice is in the icon. Are there any other changes in this pull request?
In what? I've done
Are there any other changes in this issue besides the icon?
no other changes.
And I suppose there's something developer facing that lets you decide how to specify the icon, but that's not really a usability issue. And so your only question is this title text, or this text that shows up on hover?
Yep.
I see that Offer Shal has joined us. Thanks, Offer. Does anyone have any questions about what this issue is about? I think if you've used the Drupal admin interface for a while, then you're probably pretty familiar with this. Okay, so should we have different labels depending on whether it's a vertical only drag and drop or whether you can also change hierarchy? Opinions, go ahead, Thomas.
I agree that I think they are different use cases. And for example, one possible wording I would use would be drag to reorganize for the hierarchical changes and keep it at drag to reorder for the just simply horizontal. Because I agree that it may not be immediately apparent to other people. I don't know if there's any other indication of the difference between the two situations. And it didn't matter before, but if there is a differentiated icon, then I feel that there has to be some additional labeling. Now, I'm wondering from a cited user or a non-cited user perspective, if there's anything additionally on the back end for accessibility that needs to be changed. So I would probably suggest that that be investigated as well. But as it is, it would be difficult to differentiate. And I'm partial to organize, because when I think of hierarchies, I organize hierarchies, I don't order them.
Okay, and you got a thumbs up there from Aaron. Certainly we have to avoid a purely visual indication of the difference. Go ahead, Offer.
Yeah, one thing, I'm not sure if it's related to this specifically. One thing I've been struggling with dragging, and I wish there was, as I'm dragging it to a place, almost like placeholders, so I know if I'm putting it right below, a little bit to the right, or twice to the right, you know, like this, all this ability to where is it in the hierarchy that I'm putting it, and I wish there was something that would help with that. Otherwise, I do like the up, right? Sorry, I came late, but my understanding is correct. It's like up and down versus having the cross that shows it will become hierarchy. Yeah, I do like that visual difference of showing. Otherwise, right? Because the cross is a little bit clunky interface, in my opinion. You might try to do something that doesn't accept hierarchy and just be a bit frustrated. So having a different icon, I think, is a good idea.
Yeah, I think the idea of having sort of target areas show up is out of scope for this issue. I think it is worth investigating. But on a practical level, I think that we're leveraging existing JavaScript libraries for the drag and drop. And sort of it's not something that Drupal is likely to implement all on its own. If we can use an existing library that has a better interface, I'm all for it. But again, out of scope. And Simo, go ahead.
Yeah. About additional changes to drag and drop, I think one thing we need to keep in mind that at the earliest possibility, we would want to find a way to do drag and drop so that it's fully WebCAG 2.2 compatible, because there is a new criteria in WebCAG 2.2 for dragging interfaces, and that's something that is something that we should improve on. So to make it easier, and so that currently it's possible that something that maybe other systems don't have, but this is something that needs to be improved on. I've been trying to find some examples of some things that work well, but I'm not very I didn't make any real progress on that. I just posted some questions to some forums about examples. But about changing the title there, I think, yeah, we should change it. And I'm kind of not very happy of using the difference if it would be reorder and organize, or reorganize, because it's a little bit too similar. So I think it would be nice to have that hierarchy mentioned there. So I would like to keep that word hierarchy there, even if it makes it a little bit longer.
Maybe slightly out of scope, but Simo, do you have an example of what changes are with Webpack 2.2 that would need to change?
I don't remember. So it's kind of making it keyboard accessible. So here we need to know how to hide row weights and then start comparing the weights, and it's like very difficult to do with using keyboard. So drag and drop with the keyboard is WebCAG 2.2 requirement. I didn't look into it so much, but that's something I think with Mike Gifford I talked about that at some point, or someone. But yeah, yeah. So it's being able to do that with keyboard. So if we change the library we use or something like that, then it's going to be quite a few more changes as well. So it's going to be probably a bigger package. But
Go ahead, Ralph.
Just one detail I've noticed, and also was it in regards of Ofer's question, or was it Aaron's? I'm not sure. For one, there is also the option, instead of dragging, to change it based on the weights. But one detail I've noticed, and I never really checked, to be honest, is you basically are only able to change the order based on the weight, but the hierarchy, basically the level, I'm not sure if that is possible or reflected there. And that is probably problematic. And one other detail in regards of the title, there's also the case of people who are not fully blind, but are also using a screen reader. And for them, the title would be useful as well, having that different titles between those two icons.
I'm sorry, what do you mean by the title?
Yeah, the drag to reorder.
Okay.
Drag to change order or hierarchy, or drag to reorganize, or yeah.
Title
What is shown
attribute,
in
I
Drupal.
think.
The title attribute, yes.
Title attribute, yeah.
Go ahead, Aaron.
So I wonder then, given what you were saying, Seymour, if we should avoid the use of the word drag, because that seems to me a very like mouse touch centric word, and maybe doesn't make sense if you're using a keyboard. Now, obviously, that's work still to be done, but if we're making a recommendation, much like we don't recommend using directional terms, we should maybe recommend using terms that are universally applicable.
My thought about that is, I think in WCAG they're still calling it dragging, even when they talk now about we should support keyboard.
And Ralph gave us a link in the chat to the WCAG requirements, and I do see the word dragging used in the summary. So, and Ralph, do you want to read your comment?
I just made the addition that in the brief, in the top section, the goal is don't rely on dragging for the user action. So even though the title of the success criteria is tracking movements, the goal is don't to rely on that for user interactions.
Well, my reading of that is that they are still using the term dragging, even though they want to enable it from the keyboard as well. Now, I know that Layout Builder is keyboard accessible. I'm not sure how this drag and drop interface works with the keyboard, but I suspect it does. And I think you're right that using the visible form elements, the ones that show up when you click on the show weights link, which you have, they only give you the up and down. They don't let you change the parent, which is kind of odd. Thomas?
I was thinking of possible words like change order, change position, alter order, alter position, alter hierarchy, as alternatives that remove drag. So alter or change or similar synonyms, and order, hierarchy, position. I worry that position and order mean the same thing. So, but in any case, just for people to consider. Thank you.
So at this point, shall we focus on the wordsmithing? What to use for those labels? Get a thumbs up from Ralph and from Simo. And from Thomas. Okay. So personally, I think hierarchy is not a familiar word. I prefer to keep, you know, short, simple words. I like organize a little better, even though they're both 3 syllables. Hierarchy is 4 syllables. I can see change as a good primary word to use. If we use the word change, do we have to be explicit about what to do to change? Like if you're using a mouse, you're clicking and dragging. If you're using the keyboard, it's some other approach. But is it enough to say change or reorder without saying that you have to drag to change?
I think I might be too used to the word. It was mentioned, it's kind of repeated everywhere, but one option would be to say manage order, manage hierarchy, but that's maybe too much.
So manage, Duncan in the chat suggests rearrange. Or move up and down. Is it, if we say both up and down, is that still directional text that should be avoided? On a bit of a tangent, I'm always annoyed by Jira that the default is to show the most recent comment at the top, which encourages project managers to read only the most recent comment, which is a terrible thing. And then people talk about comments below, and I always change the default. So I have personal and nearly constant experience with inaccurate directional language. But
And then also when the new comment box is at the bottom, but the recent comments are at the top, that infuriates me.
oh yes.
I'm back at my desk now, so I probably sound better, and I'm less wet and windswept than I was earlier.
No, your audio was fine before, and it's fine now.
Oh, good.
Is parent a good term to use? I know that recently we added links to create a child taxonomy term or a child menu item, and the label on the link is add child item. So perhaps parent child is a familiar way of describing the hierarchy. I think they're at least simpler words than hierarchy, maybe not as explicit, but I guess those are, I prefer parent and child rather than the word hierarchy. Thomas?
We could also just drop the verb and have something like reorder and reposition. and I'm not fond of parent-child because I think that's I like the terms and I'm used to using them, but they tend to be very domain specific, and I worry that a lot of people wouldn't really understand if they read that, like change parent or change child or whatever. Like, I don't know what language really convey to users who have not encountered hierarchical relationships, whereas I do think we deal with hierarchical relationships often enough that that's not a foreign concept. Not the word hierarchy, but what we're trying to have people do visually. And
Okay, Ralph?
I wonder, sort of all the examples are still sort of abstract except the move up and down. So why not simply provide clear calls to action? What is basically possible as a label? And in that regard, move up and down, and for the other, move up and down, left and right, or something in that regard, so that you just know as a user what your options are, where you're able to move the icon or the component.
Yeah, I guess conceptually, do we want the terms we use here to describe position, which is what the icons suggest? The icons suggest left, right, up, down for one icon, and just left, right. I'm sorry, just up, down for the other icon. So do we want the label to mimic that sort of positional way of thinking of it, or do we want the label to be more conceptual, that we're choosing what the parent is and then position among the children, or parent and order? So in the chat, Thomas says, order is conceptual and absolute, and I am not fond of directions. So you meant fond, not found. Oh, and I missed a comment from Simo. Change order and depth, or change order? And yeah, I think I already read the previous comment, previous suggestion, which was rearrange from Duncan. So if we do go with positional terms, then I kind of like move up and down, and then move up and down, comma, left and right seems a little too long to me. So I would take out the ands and just move up, comma, down, comma, left, comma, right. As long as you're typing in there, Ralph, could you also add Simo's suggestion of change order for, oh, we already have change order and depth. And Simo's suggestion was just change order without mentioning the depth.
Yeah, I thought change order was for the.
Oh, you're right, you're right.
Yeah, I was planning to shoot down that up, down, left, right option by switching my test site to Arabic, but actually it doesn't work because it's still left up. It's like it's still the same directions because you can move both ways in the hierarchy if that exists. But the dragging icon is on the right if you didn't know in Arabic, while in English it's on the left side.
Yeah, that's what I was asking earlier, whether like we know it's not okay to talk about left or up because those can change. But my question earlier was, is it okay to say left and right, up and down?
Yeah, because we can, if it's not like a end of the line or like like first or last, then we can move to, if we can move to any direction. So it's kind of horizontal and vertical. We can move. Did not like it doesn't matter if we start from left or right. We can still move back and forth if we can.
Right, and I like what you just said, move any direction or move anywhere. Those are possibilities. Offer?
Yeah, I guess I like any direction because depends where. And CSS been doing was making a lot of effort to remove the words up, down, left, right from CSS. And now in logical CSS, it's all blocks and inline start and end. So because some languages, I speak Hebrew, so I know they're right and left, but some are also verticals. I did not see for interfaces like that, but just because CSS was making that effort, I think we should try to help not going there with specifically as what does up down mean versus what right left means.
Thomas?
I was going to say the same thing. Like, I'm allergic to up and down because every time I read or hear it, I think I'm supposed to move my hands above my computer. Like, I don't think of up and down a list. So it's really confusing to use those words to me. But I'm not a fan of using the word hierarchy because I love hierarchy, but I don't know how many people I've encountered who know what a hierarchy is if they haven't had to use it for their job.
Okay, and Duncan makes a comment. Ralph, could you look at the a vocabulary page like tags? It says you can reorganize the terms and tags using their drag and drop handles and group terms under a parent term by sliding them under and to the right of the parent. Ah, so that clearly violates all the rules.
I mean, when you translate it, you can update what's needed, but
Good point. But it certainly establishes a precedent for the term parent. So if we go with move in any direction for the bottom one, the last one in Ralph's list, then for the first one in Ralph's list, maybe move vertically rather than up and down. That's not any better, is it? It's one character shorter, but up and down are simple terms. Vertically is not. Or we could go with, two very different things. We could use change order for the first one and move in any direction for the second. So are there any options here that people actually like? Or are we still searching for something? So Ralph likes move in any direction. And Thomas likes change order. And is it a good thing or a bad thing that if we use those two, one of them is positional and the other is more conceptual? Is that should we aim for more consistency, or should we aim for more differentiation between the two?
I'm wondering how often does that change on the same page? So if we have a field display page, manage display for, and then if we have option to use field sets, and then you can so it kind of
Simo, are you having trouble with your audio? You broke off.
yeah, I'm thinking about how does this work when we have field sets?
I don't think field sets are in Drupal core. There's
Oh.
a config module that adds them.
Okay, yeah, then it's not. Yeah, I'm so used to having them around.
And unlike the page we were looking at before, this page, when you have the field group module installed, lets you choose the parent. Just as I guess the core just lets you choose either enabled or disabled. But the field group module, in addition to those two, lets you choose a parent field group. So should we leave it at that for now? A suggestion to use change order and move in any direction, and leave it as a suggestion rather than recommendation. It's a little past half-hour mark, so if we can't say anything more productive about this issue now, let's move on to another one. I get a thumbs up from Simo. And a thumbs up from Ralph. And no one else is coming up with new ideas. If you're trying to, then you forgot to unmute yourself. So Ralph, will you add a comment and again, make it a suggestion and not a recommendation? Ralph, you're still muted?
I've wrote in okay in the chat.
Oh,
okay.
So you did. Missed that. Okay, so let's move on. Ralph, I think you had a second issue you were thinking of bringing up. Anyone else have issues they'd like to talk about? Then go ahead, Ralph. What's your second issue?
Okay. That's an issue we've discussed already in the summer around August. It's basic and Benji and Simo, you were on vacation, I suppose, back then. So that is one of the reasons it would be a good thing to revisit it. And on the other hand, I've also noticed the deprecation of the field layout module and going into contrib. And those two aspects, long story short, issue number is 33454 84498 improve the manage form display page by untwining field widgets that belong to the main content and the sidebar. Basically, it's the following. There's basically, I've listed the problems in here. There is a disconnect between the order fields on the manage form display page compared to the field widgets on the node add or the node edit page. The order is mixed, in particular for the basic page content type. You have no indication which fields are the actual form elements and which are the metadata form fields in the sidebar. And the provide a menu link checkbox is the only form element in the sidebar that could not be disabled and hidden, and it is missing a field widget on the manage form display page. And you have the option to change the order on the manage form display page indicated through the drag icons or the weight options. For fields like promoted to front page, it's possible that you're able to change the order within the details element for promotion options if you drag it underneath sticky at the top of the list field widget, but the position of the deals elements never changes. If you, for example, change the position of the URL alias field widget except moving it into the disabled section, there is no effect at all moving it up and down the list in general. I went through and did screenshots as well as tables comparing placing them next to each other, and it is a certain challenge for the user to make the connection between the elements you have here on the manage form display page compared to the create article page. And the order is also mixed, and I went through also, it is even complicated. For example, if you add 2 more fields in regards of the position, it's basically a mix, and it's confusing and challenging. And the point is, 2 or 3 weeks ago, I have to admit I never really installed the field layout module, which was experimental for a long time, and which is getting moved out of core again into contrib. There is the issue number 3007167 called metadata enable layout builder for form displays and duplicate field layout. And there's also a follow-up issue, move field layout data model and API directly into Drupal core entity display base, which is issue number 2844302. And point is, if you install the field layout module, then it complicates things even further, because, for example, if you have the layout settings and set it to 2 columns, you have one section called first, another section called second, and then disabled. And basically, it makes the already complicated situation outlined in the issue I've created even more complicated and problematic from my point of view. And so it suffers from the basically same underlying problem that the sidebar, the items belonging to the sidebar are not really distinguishable. And also it's not clear that changing the position or hiding parts of it sometimes or most of the times has no effect at all. And that's the point. And back then in August, or in the issue itself, my suggestion was to add a secondary tabs there, one for the main content and another for the sidebar. But point back then was that it's suboptimal moving things in between, and therefore it was not the preferred option. But to a real consensus how to move forward, we haven't come back then. And we said either to discuss it on Slack or revisit it. And yeah, I'm just brought it up again in here after noticing the field layout moving out of core. And maybe to coordinate both efforts, and because the problem still exists if field layout is moving into contrib, and it suffers still the same problem. Any questions?
First, can you put the links to those issues in the chat?
Yep, 1 second.
And I think that I sort of understand what's going on in the back end here, which is that when we create that sidebar in the node module, and we recently did the same thing for what was it? Menu links. The theme is doing that without paying attention to the choices the administrator has made on the manage form display page. And so I think that what you're asking here is to give the administrator more control over how the page is organized and what goes in the main section and what goes in the sidebar. Aaron?
Thanks. Yeah, it's a difficult problem. I think, excuse me. Sorry, just take a drink of water there. The sidebar is also only one way of representing this problem, because before the sidebar was added, it was presented as at the bottom of the form as a detail group, or whatever you call it, the vertical tabs group rather. And so you have the same problem where it's not clear which fields are in the vertical tabs and which fields are sort of in that main content area. And I don't think this is I don't think it's an easy problem to solve. And I wonder if the whole idea of like these vertical tabs or sidebar regions, whatever you want to call them, being hard coded, is kind of at the root of this problem. Because imagine for a moment if the field group module was in core, and with the field group module you can create these tab groups and what you're seeing here. And if that was part of core, it would be a lot clearer in the field UI, because you could see, okay, this is the group for, like, you know, the published options for the menu stuff, and then you could create your own groups even. But it would at least help to alleviate some of the confusion around, okay, what goes in the sidebar, what doesn't, you know. So this is potentially a big problem to solve, but I think it's not there's not going to be a single easy solution. Part of it is that concept of like regions that you talked about in the field layout, and part of it is about maybe you know, moving those tabs from being hard coded to being part of the field UI.
Thomas, go ahead.
To me, it seems almost as if we're discussing something like historically these types of forms, these creation forms, were very, very static. But as Drupal's evolved over the years, and there's been more that we've added to these form displays, we're really talking about a layout builder for forms, in these being core forms, like the forms used within the site, like create article or comment or whatever. And so it would seem to me that this is a very philosophical change. And I'm not for or against it. I don't really have a strong sense of what would be best right now, but it sounds like we're talking about something that is very fundamental to how these particular things operate across the site. And so is that where we are really wanting to go, like controlling more of the layout for these types of forms?
Ralph, go ahead.
Me, in the first place, the main problem is simply the labeling. You have no way to distinguish which of those fields are main content and which are meta. And that is, in regards How it's ordered or how it's solved, that's a secondary problem. But the main problem is basically to distinguish which is which and what you're able to interact with it.
Yeah, and I think that the reason for that is it's always been the case in Drupal that the theme has final say over what the page looks like. And the theme is picking out some of these fields and putting them into the sidebar. And there's no communication back from the theme to the admin form to indicate that. And it seems to me that once you give the administrator the option to put things into fields, you'll automatically have that indication that you're looking for. It will probably also simplify the theme code. We won't have these sort of hard-coded choices of which fields should be pulled out and which shouldn't. So I think the solution to the problem that you bring up is the other two issues you brought up, where once the field layout API is in core, then we'll want to have an admin UI that makes use of it. And when we have the admin UI that lets you decide what goes in the sidebar and what goes in the main area, then you'll have the indication on the managed display page, that your managed form display that you're looking for. Go ahead.
But from my understanding, it won't move into core anymore. It will go into contrib. From my understanding, it's not.
No, I think it is being moved in. I think the plan is to move it into core and deprecate the actual module, because the module was never made stable. I don't think it's. At least I don't think. I think the plan with those issues is like move parts of it just into the field UI itself, and then, or
Okay,
maybe some of the extra bits. So, but that, because even the layout stuff is sort of done by the layout discovery module.
Yeah, look at 3007167 again. The meta issue, yes. Yeah. So enable layout builder for form displays and deprecate field layout. So it's talking about moving the code out of the module and into core, and then deprecating the module, which will become a stub.
Okay, yeah. Then I confused it again.
And then if you look at the proposed resolution section, it gives a little more detail. There are two parts of it. There's the form display, and then there's the page display. And I guess the idea is to remove the page display part because we have layout builder instead, but to keep the form display, which is what we're talking about here. Go ahead, Thomas.
To me, just reading it or rereading this meta issue, it sounds like we really need to postpone any discussion until this work is done, because that philosophical question I was asking about, it's been decided. Like the decision is to move that type of functionality in, to make it a more layout builder type capable environment. So I don't think we should be making decisions until this work is completed.
Yeah, I think I'm coming to the same conclusion, that sort of the work that's already in progress on these last two issues that Ralph brought up is the work that will lead to a solution to the first one. improving the managed form display. So working on various projects, I often get annoyed when the front-end developers working on the theme or hard code which sections are going in what order on the page, and they often ignore what the admin UI gives for the page display, the view, not the form. And I guess Ralph was pointing out that Drupal core already does the same thing on the admin side, the back end theme rather than the front end theme.
Yeah, and it's actually the admin theme, admin. So the admin page for the form should, I think, first check if that we have that checkbox use admin theme for editing content, or if it's using admin theme for editing content or the front end theme, because that's also, they could be in different places in different themes.
That's true, yes.
And it's just a checkbox. So there should be a connection there to know which theme is used for editing that form. And I'm not sure if it was here, but isn't there at least used to be a possibility that certain user groups can use admin theme for editing, but other users use the front-end theme. So there was kind of this kind of division. I don't, maybe it might have been contrib module, but I've seen that kind of.
No, there is a separate permission for being allowed to use the admin theme. And I think that overrides the choice of whether to use the admin theme for editing pages. So if you don't have the permission, then you have to use the front-end theme for editing.
Yeah.
Aaron, did you want to say something?
Oh no, I was just going to say exactly what you just said.
Okay.
Yeah, so that would make it even more complicated to know. So it needs a bigger change to even get the information on which, like, to get the reliable information on which field is on which area of the edit form. So that's even a little bit difficult to get certain information about. But yeah,
So Ralph,
then just,
yeah, there's the next permission is the one I'm thinking of. View the administration theme.
It's kind of a weirdly worded permission, because you probably should be use the administration theme, but like the one above, use administration pages, that's out of scope.
Okay, so I think the only thing to do for this issue is to add the meta issue for layout discovery as a related issue, and probably postpone.
Postpone it on the meta issue.
I think so.
Yeah, I agree.
it would be really nice to get this working.
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to say now I kind of want to deprecate that permission, because if it didn't exist, that would also slightly simplify what we're talking about.
Which permission? View the administration theme permission?
Yeah, because like I don't think it's really, I can't imagine a site. I think like that's a kind of like 10-20% use case that maybe a site has, and like certainly is a fault is something that's been around for a long time. So maybe it was like more relevant in the earlier days of Drupal, but I can't think of a situation where like most sites would not have that permission enabled for any role that could use admin pages, because we're moving in a direction where the admin theme is becoming more and more capable, and we want people be using it. Like, I could totally see someone getting a situation where they're like, oh, why can't these users see the admin theme? And they have no idea, and it's just because they didn't get that role permission. So I almost feel like this is like, permission is kind of a barrier in some ways. And I'm not saying it's not relevant, I'm just saying like, I don't think that's something that it belongs at core anymore. Maybe that's like, if you want that, maybe that's a contrib thing.
Yeah, and it of course leads to confusion because you know, people who do have that permission will tend to forget that there are other people using the site who won't see this in the admin theme, and so they'll pages won't work the same, and you can't share screenshots to give instructions.
Could be used on some site that has a like very strong division between user generated content and admin generated content. So for that kind of site, it could kind of make sense to have part of it on the front end theme and then some different stuff on edited on. Yeah, but it's a like edge case probably anyways.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
that's what Aaron was saying.
That's why I think like that's something that should be moved to contrib, because if you want that, you know you want it. I think the majority of sites probably don't even know this permission exists, and so it probably becomes a hindrance in the majority of cases. But like if you want that, like you know you want it, and therefore there's probably a module to do it.
Okay, so we are nearly at the end of the hour. Any last comments? Anyone want to suggest things to think about for next week?
Will somebody create an issue for removing that or moving that into contrib?
That permission? I don't care enough about it, but feel free if you want to volunteer. Thomas?
I just wanted to mention that we're continuing to meet to talk about Drupalisms and to scope it out. So Ralph and Em and I met this week, and we'll be meeting again on Monday in 2 weeks. And everybody on the UX team is invited and encouraged to come if they have time and interest. And we're trying right now to make certain that we've got things properly scoped in our discussions, and we know the steps that we want to do to move forward.
Okay, does that meeting take place on Zoom or Slack huddle or what?
It's Zoom.
Okay, and can you post a link in the UX channel?
I don't know if we have a link right now. We've been
Yeah, there's Emma set up a link. There's there's like a Slack group that at the moment I think it'll probably become a channel shortly, I would guess, but Emma's kind of been leading on it, and I've been sort of helping her a little bit with it. This goes back to the BOF we did at DrupalCon
Okay,
as well.
Yeah, give me something I can click on if I want to join. Ralph?
And just a reminder for everyone in regards of the field types microcopy, the Google Sheet for ideating is still up.
Okay, again, can you post something in the Slack channel?
Yep, or I can also post in here.
Thank you. And now we're at the end of the hour. Yes?
I was just gonna say, yeah, I'm happy to create an issue for the that permission, since seemingly I have such a strong feeling about it.
Yes, thank you. Okay, I'll be back next week. Hope you can all join.
Thank you.
Thanks, Benji. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks. Bye.